Good afternoon. I am Rosalind Phillips, Vice Chair of the Jacksonville Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, and I'd like to call the meeting for Monday, March 28th, 2022 to order. We are anticipating a quorum, though we do not have it at this point, but we are going to go forward with the meeting. Commissioners, you have the agenda that has been previously provided, and we're going to move forward with the public comments at this time. If there is anyone in the room who would like to speak, or anyone who's joining us virtually, if you would signify by raising your hand or acknowledging yourself, period, for public comment. Seeing no one in the room, is there anyone online virtually who would like to address the Board of Commissioners at this time? Okay, if not, there are a number of informational items that we can move forward with that do not require a vote. Do we have any commissioners that have joined us by Zoom or meetings who are with us virtually? Seeing none, we're going to move then to the agency financial review with Mr. Dennis Lohr.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We're looking at the financial statements as of February 28th, 2022. February is our fifth month, so we are looking at an expected budget of 41.67%. We're starting off with our operating income by source. For the current month, we ended up with net income of $1,060,721. That includes $742,000 from operations and $318,000 from HAP payments. Our central office, we ended up the month at 52.87% of income. We're $540,000 over budget. That's primarily due to the Jacks Beach RAD conversion and the asset repositioning. For our central office expenses, we're at $1.5 million. We're about $278,000 under budget, and it's primarily due to payroll, due to some positions that haven't been filled yet. Our public housing, we're at 48.68%, so we're doing very well at about $1.8 million. Our expenses, we're at about $1.7 million, and our net operating income for public housing is $131,000. For our Section 8 department, we're at 37.99% for our admin fees. We're about $216,000 below where we're anticipated to be. And that's primarily due to HUD being 6 months behind with their admin fee reconciliations. And then I will tell you that in March, we received $150,000 extra. So we will make up a good portion of that deficit. For our expenses for Section 8, we're right on track at 40.12%, so we're doing very well with our expenses. Moving on to Gregory West, our income is right on track at 41.40. Our expenses for Gregory West are under by about $94,000, and we ended the month with $308,000 of net operating income. For Brentwood Park, we are at 43.32%. We're about 2% over budget, or about $48,000. And for our income or our expenses at Brentwood, we're at 40.03 with net operating income of about $248,000. When we look at our estimated reserves, we ended.
Before you leave that section, Mr. Lord, was it public housing that was about 4% over in expenses that happened, or why were we about 4%?
Yes, public housing is over on expenses. It's primarily due to the asset repositioning fee for the Jack's Beach property. This was transferred to the central office as a management fee for HUD guidance.
And you said there was about 3,000 extra received in income on Section 8?
There will be 150 extra in March
And
to
what
make
is,
up the deficit.
okay.
Looking at our reserves, we ended the month at just under $47 million. Primarily it's made up of Section 8 public housing, a little over 6%, and some Section 8 money as well. Every month we look at quick ratio and our MENAR. The HUD goal is 4, and at all of our sites are at least 7. Our lowest site is Scattered Site. And our average MENAR is almost 12. So we're doing very well with our ratios. Now looking at our RAD properties, we're in our second month of the year, so we're looking for budget to be 16.67% completed. We're at 18.43, so we're about 2% over budget, about $28,000. Our expenses for the ways are at 14.81%, so we're about 2% low, or about $13,000. The ways. For Centennial Towers, we're about 1.5% low on our budget for our income, and we're about 3% on our expenses. And this is primarily due to the lower income or the lower occupancy during the beginning of the fiscal year. For Hogan Creek, we're about 10% for our income. This is occupancy related, again, due to the RAD conversion and the remodels. And then for our expenses, we're at 12.61%, so we're about 4% short, or $52,000.
Any questions?
I don't have any at this, Commissioner.
Thank you for that update. There are a few things that will require action, and so we're going to wait for our chair, Mr. Walker, to join. Mr. Alexander, if you'd like to be CEO.
Hey, good. Yeah, so I'm still waiting to hear back from JEA to get their response to what was said at the board meeting. I have the story written from Jacksport's side. Is it for print, or is this something that's going to wait for a day for print? Or
Excuse me, did you mute yourself?
It's not. It's ready to go from what I have at this point in time. We just want to add that they had.
Please mute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
So with the CEO report, our financial audit is completed on all 3 of our RAD properties. A physical assessment has begun with Nelrod. They're starting out, and we projected it to take about 6 months for them to complete that whole process. And finally, I bring some good news. Centennial Towers have been completed. We're just waiting on a generator, but all of the cosmetic work and gut rehabs, everything is totally completed. In terms of Hogan Creek, we're working on the 9th, the 8th, and the 7th floor, and they're doing quite a bit of work on that building. As you see when you walk up to our building, that you see all the new windows in that property, and that's come along very well. And using some of our capital fund money, Centennial Tower East, Centennial Towers West, and Anders are getting new windows replacement. So we're doing upgrades at that property. And I'm excited to announce that HUD started back up with REACT, and our REACT score was a 93. So we will not have audit or inspection at that property for the next 3 years. So I want to acknowledge Ms. Jackie Harris and Mr. Daniel Mitchell. Both directors over there did an outstanding job in getting a 93% on that property. In terms of training.
Before you leave that though, even though we're not gonna have those inspections, we continue to do our internal inspections and those types of review throughout so that we maintain this 93 or better.
Yes, well, we actually do 4 inspections. We do 4 inspections yearly, so each quarter we do 4 inspections of all of our properties.
I just wanted to make sure that the
Yes.
public understands that just because we're not having those audits, that we still continue to inspect our properties and maintain the level of quality.
Yes, we do.
That
Yes,
got
sir.
us to this
Yes,
point.
ma'am.
Yes, sir.
And, excuse me, Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I direct a question to Mr. Alexander?
Certainly.
Mr. Alexander, I know you said that Centennial Towers was waiting on the generator,
Yes.
but they currently have the old generator working
Yes.
though, right?
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
okay. All right,
That is correct.
okay.
And to providing training for our staff, we had 26 people go through the Housing Choice Specialist training last week. We did task compliance with moving forward with becoming certified asset managers. We do have some certified managers here in all capacity and certified commercial managers, but this has to do with more with finance. So compliance will be moving towards that. And also, we have these emergency housing vouchers, and with these emergency housing vouchers, we are allotted up to $3,500 as an incentive for fees to ensure that these folks who are looking for emergency housing have some assistance. And these fees can go with down payments or incentivize the landlord of $500, or even help buy furniture, or even paying off previous utility bills, just so that we can get these folks leased up. So the federal government has allowed up to 35% option, and $35,000 options for that. And moving forward with that, we have a total allocation of 196. We have about 26 of them leased up. I think we're making a lot of progress in that, and we currently have 154 folks out there searching that can utilize that $3,500 as well.
How do we qualify people to receive this additional assistance?
Excuse me?
How do people qualify to receive this additional assistance?
Well, when they go through the continuum care process, they identify if they have any needs or any impediments that would allow them, or will not allow them to be able to lease up in a timely fashion. So they let them know in advance.
So these are not existing renters, these are all for new renters, and it'll help them overcome any hurdles or obstacles they have in going into.
That is correct, specifically with the emergency housing vouchers, not with our traditional Section 8 vouchers. These are the emergency
Right.
housing vouchers, what we got the 196 allocation for. Yes.
Okay, so they're selected based on their place on the list?
No, they come through referrals from the continuum
From the
care.
continuum. Okay,
Yes.
all right, that makes sense. Since they're emergency, they're separate from them.
Yes, ma'am. And also with File Vision, we have completed more than 9,000 files in quest of completing the 1,000 files. And again, I want to acknowledge Mr. Daniel Mitchell and Ms. Jackie Harris and Ms. Kathy and Lisa Laurie for making progress with that. And moving forward, we have the CEO report, which we had some discussion on. Ms. Robin, I think you had some questions at the last board meeting, and Ms. Proctor had to work on providing the board with some information. Great. So, back here. So we all know the mission of the Jacksonville Housing Authority. What jumps out underneath this current climate is affordable housing and effective social services to low and moderate income families and individuals. That is our mission statement. And that mission statement has been around since 1994. Maybe I'll step back here. Keep in mind. So when you look at the Section 8 public housing and the housing choice program, most folks don't realize, but at one point we had 1.2 million units nationwide. And now public housing is down to 970 units, 70,000 units nationwide. And the public housing, the Section 8 program has increased to 2.3 million vouchers nationwide. So it's been a swing from public housing back over to Section 8. The reason is because the HUD has been putting more money in Section 8 than they have in more so than public housing. And one of the key things is, if you look at the last infrastructure deal, you see that it was maybe about $400-something million put in there for public housing, but it was $1 billion put in there for Section 8. Good. So when you look at the vouchers, we talk about the housing payment standards. Most folks talk about that is not enough money to address the vouchers because the voucher is not high enough for the units that they're renting for. But when you look at the dynamics, technically the fair market rents is not raised until we get a report out every year with new fair market rents in August. When they come out in August. So if the fair market rents increase 20, 15, and 30%, you can believe that the fair market rents definitely impact our market. So our rents will go up and we will be subsidized by that. When you look at utilization, HUD funds you based on your utilization from the previous year. If you're not funded, if you don't utilize the vouchers in 1 year, and you only get 90%, then you will only be funded 90% the next year. So it's important that the Housing Authority get 100% so they can get 100% of the funding. And if you look at what HUD initiatives are, they are looking and expecting all the housing authorities to be at 98% by the end of 2022, and they expect all the housing authorities to be at 100% by the end of 2023. We consistently stay around 97 or 98%. We currently about 96%, but we have reached as high as 101%. So it's a balancing act with us. But Ms. Catherine and her department does a very good job with that. In terms of Ms. Phillips, last time you asked how many people per bedroom size, how many people were searching. Currently, right now, we have folks with vouchers that actually live in units right now. We have about 627 of them out looking for units right now. And the percentages up there, 38 families with 0, which is efficiencies, 391 for 1 bedrooms, 140 for 2 bedrooms. For 3 bedrooms, you have 53, 1 for 4, and 3 for number 5, and 1 for 6. Now, in terms of new enrollees, these are first-time people on our program. And first-time people on our program, we have about 732. So when you look at the totality of how many people are out there searching for vouchers, we have a total of 1,358. So we understand what is the voucher program has been facing. and adequate fair market rents. The prorations over the last several years have been very challenging. Been very challenging, as well as administrative fees. All these fees have impacted how the Section 8 program works. When you look at our numbers statistically, and this, me and Ms. Brock had this conversation, we have 1,515 landlords on our program. We spend more than $5 million per month. When you factor in utilities, we could easily get up to about 5.2 or $5.3 million. Now, here's the caveat: 61.7% of the landlords have only one family underneath contracts. So we have a lot of mom and pop families underneath just one contract. And when you look at 13.3% had only two families underneath contract, and this is as late as March the 1st. So we only have 9.8% of our landlords who house 10 or more tenants. So we have that house 10 or more tenants. So we have a total of about 75% of our families that are either with one or two landlords, and I mean with one or two families. What happens is most people talk about Section 8. So when you're looking at the dynamics of what type of landlords are on our Section 8 program, when you look at that, most of our landlords are just single landlords. And they look to put the houses on the program because we consistently pay every single month. So that's what they're looking for, consistency to get paid every single month. So when you look at the dynamics of looking at folks looking to increase rent, typically most of these landlords have a lot of history with Section 8 and they understand the program. What we do is look for more landlords to jump on the program, and we try to look at other ways to probably incentivize them to be able to join the program. But we do have 1,515.
Mr. Alexander, first, apologies to my colleagues for being late. Commissioner Phillips, thank you very much. To both my other commissioners and Phillips as well, my sincere apologies. I don't know how to work a calendar. Can you go back to that last slide, Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Those 1515 landlord participation, approximately how many of those a year do we inspect relative to unit inspections? Do you have any idea?
Oh yeah, we inspect every last one of them.
So 1,500 landlords, we are doing some level of quality control check every year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If their properties are occupied, all 1515 are occupied.
Yeah, we have 1,500. We have more landlords, but these are our current landlords as of March 1st.
Okay, I thought earlier you said there were only this is for Section 8, right?
Yes, this was Section 8.
Did you not say earlier that there were 1350 something?
Yes, people looking for units
Those are the people that are
on the
looking
street
for the
that is
units.
looking for units.
But you also said that some of them were already in housing
Yes,
as
600.
well.
Yes, 672 of them was already on the program.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Alexander, if I may try to help, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Commissioner, go ahead, please.
To help Commissioner Phillip. Now, when he was talking about, remember a few minutes ago, he said something about that was looking that are already in.
Yeah, can you go
And,
back to that
um,
slide, please, for us?
So,
Yeah, that one.
so we
Mhm.
have like residents that are already in
Yeah.
units that are on Section 8,
Mhm.
but when their renewal time came,
They wanted to
decided,
look
yeah,
for something
yeah,
different,
yeah.
but they're still in the unit currently until they find something new.
Exactly,
Or
yeah.
their lease is up.
Right.
But the total number of families, if you will, that we have in Section 8 is the 1359?
No, that's the total amount of families that is out searching for a unit.
Some of it says, then it says enroll, and then it says participant.
Participants are folks that are currently on the program and
And
has
they're
a voucher.
looking, but they're
Yes.
looking.
But they already in a Section 8 unit. They
But
might
the
not
ones
want.
that say enrollees are new people.
Can we go through, apologies for our
I'm
court reporter,
sorry.
Commissioner
I'm
Phillips, go
sorry.
ahead. If you could ask the question then, Mr. Alexander.
Okay.
Go ahead, Commissioner Phillips, because I think you wanted to clarify that point, which I think is important.
Okay, so total number of families looking is 1359.
That's correct.
What's the total availability of Section 8 vouchers?
Total available of Section 8 vouchers,
Mhm.
we have a total of 8,302 vouchers
Right, but
available.
we're not looking at, we're only looking at the people who were searching.
Right,
Yeah, because that's what I asked about last time. So
Right.
all of these people are searching.
searching.
And so the ones that don't have a place currently under voucher is the 732. And then the participants who are in a Section 8
Right.
location are the 627. Okay,
Yes.
all right.
And just to confirm, the 627 are in a unit, but have decided to look elsewhere.
That's correct.
Understood. Thank you.
Right.
Good. So when we looked at, we actually fall under the safe MAR, which is a smart area fair market rents. And we looked at the percentage of all of the percentage of rents that we pay. We currently have only 6 areas that we pay more than 100%. 100%. And that's based on back in April 2019, we had left those at that 100% because it would have drastically impacted the families that was in that specific area. Now, we looked at what it would cost if we raised up some of these rents or the percentage of these rents and raising them up, we added up and we took everybody to 100%. Now, keep in mind, HUD allows you to go to 110% without notifying them. But we also have to go to, you can go up to 120%, but you need approval. And then you can go to 120% for specific reasons. But if we was to raise everyone, and we have 47 zip codes, if we was to raise everyone up to 100%, it will cost the agency $4.7 million per year. And on a monthly basis, we would be close to about $400,000. So we are looking at one, possibly not taking them all the way up to 100%. We are considering what it would be, the dynamics of it would be if we increase them maybe 2% a year. But we basically want to wait until August, because if we raise the rents now, we have to pay for it. But if the rents are raised through the fair market rents in August, then we will be subsidized for them.
So, Mr. Alexander, is it a fair statement or question to ask that it appears, I'm looking for your, that the calculations of fair market rents are not keeping pace with actual market rents? Is that a fair?
That is a fact. That is very correct.
How far behind do you think we are? Are we behind a quarter, a year, 18 months?
Well, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
But they do look at the fact that 40% of, when they look at the fair market rents, I know they poll about at least 40% of the landlords.
Mm-hmm.
So when you, the fair market rents comes out of DC, I would be shocked if it's not a significant increase.
Do you think it'll be enough of an increase to bridge the gap to where, you know, the tenants and families being displaced via the current rental market are now going to be competitive to be in that rental market again?
We hope it is. We hope it is. Because when you look at the current market in Jacksonville, the market went up 8.2%, but at the same time, they projecting at least 5% every year for the next couple of years. So HUD is, most of the folks are a little skeptical about raising the rents, even though we're talking about 2% here. And one of the reasons is, even though HUD came out and the PIH notice clearly stating that you can raise the rents up to 110%, the problem is they won't fund you. And then next year, even if they did fund you, they only want to do it for a year. So they leave the housing authority basically holding the bag.
And
when it comes to
hypothetically
chapter money.
speaking, and this may be a question for you or Mr. Lohr, I'm assuming for the sake of argument that this housing authority does not have sufficient surplus cash to be able to carry that burden for a year should HUD not match it. Is that a fair statement?
We could survive. We
Okay.
could survive, but we want to be prudent when it comes to spending the money, because we're thinking about in terms of survival of the agency if HUD didn't provide us the money. So
Yeah.
we have to make calculated decisions when it comes to determine, should we put the money out? Can we put the money out? When will we get reimbursed? We have to consider all options.
And I'm assuming it's an all or none question. In other words, we couldn't do 50% of the vouchers up to 110%. Do you know if it's an all or none question?
Well, theoretically, you want to be fair across the board.
Correct.
You don't want to just raise in one specific area, you raise the rents up over there, but you don't do it on the other side. Then you start a lot of controversy with landlords on one side asking for money because the other side get it. So if you want to do it, you want to be fair across the board.
Understood. Thank you. Commissioner Brock and Commissioner Griggs, thank you.
Through the chair, Mr. Alexander, when you talked about the fair market rent, and you talked about the new amount coming out in August.
Yes.
When that new amount come out in August, our tenants that are already leased up, that are in properties, are we gonna go and raise those tenants' rent if the fair market rent goes up?
No, typically what happens when they renew their lease,
Okay,
that takes effect.
okay,
Commissioner
thank
Griggs.
you.
Yeah, I'm just curious to find out what happened market, our rent rates in 2015 when this mandate came out. Were we able to create any balance at the time and continuation of marketplace as it was anything else? Did it set us, is that a thing that we can look to help create balance going forward?
Well, I thought it could create a lot of balance because you had some areas that wasn't getting a whole lot of rent based on the fair market rents. But because of the small area fair market rent, you would take that specific zip code and take the rents for that specific zip code, and that's how you base the fair market rents off.
So in your opinion, when we, in August, this would go a long way to stabilize, and create some balance for rent for our particular clients?
Well, I think with the fair market rents coming out, it would create some stability in terms of and some options with tenants going out and searching for units because they can pay more money for these units.
Can as we move forward and we get closer to August, if we choose to not do some type of action now, I'd be interested in knowing what we could do now and then, or stay ahead of what we may be anticipating with the market, and not just sort of rely on the feds to make us whole, or make the market whole every 6 years.
Yeah, well, this was a change in the program, so that's why it happened 4 years ago, but the fair market rents come out every year. So by them coming out every year, it makes a difference, but in terms of if we waited until August and the rents go up, then we would be subsidized for it, so we'd be able to get money for that.
So in your opinion, there would be really not a whole lot we could do to anticipate what that would be going forward. We just should rely on waiting for them to inform us what on an annual basis.
Yeah, we're looking at some ways to possibly incentivize landlords out there, but we want to be very careful with that. And keep in mind, we have 1,300 folks out there looking for vouchers, but keep in mind, we do have close to 8,000 people already leased up. You know, so it's close to 8,000 people had found units.
Commissioner Brock.
To the chair, to Commissioner Griggs. when Mr. Alexander said that it was a change in the program, the change he's talking about is that, remember when we had the public hearing where they were talking about 2 heartbeats to a room? And so Section 8 did not get approved, like public housing did, because people came out for public housing and spoke against that 2 heartbeats to a room. But Section 8 did not. No one showed up at that public meeting to speak against that. And so that's how our vouchers started to pay. And so in other words, in public housing, a mother with herself, a boy and a girl get 3 bedrooms in public housing. In Section 8, a mother with a boy, a girl, and herself gets 2 bedrooms. So see, that's why the program changed and the amount of the vouchers changed it. Am I correct? Somewhat, Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
So, Mr. Alexander, piggybacking on Commissioner Griggs's question. So what I'm processing, which I think is what you're getting to, Commissioner Griggs, no matter how you slice it, we're always going to be behind market trends because the vouchers are effectively, a year behind. So every time we look to get a voucher, when we get the vouchers for August of 22, the new amounts that are payable pursuant to the vouchers, the FMRs, the reality is rent growth has continued from January to August. So by the time those numbers come out for 2022, they're effectively stale. Is that an accurate summation?
Well, it all depends on who you have out on the street looking for units. And
True,
we
yep.
always accept the fact when they do the fair market study that it always benefits the housing authority. But the barometer for it is to clearly look at your utilization.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard to say that it's hard to find a unit when you're constantly at 98 or 97% utilization or even 99%. When you have utilization that falls around 85 or 80, then it said there's not enough units out there to lease because people can't find it. You would be hard pressed to try to convince somebody that with 97 or 98% utilization.
But doesn't that also surmise that we've taken everybody off our wait list and there's nobody else that needs affordable housing?
Well,
In
that
other
may
words,
say that
yeah.
it might not be a real big need for more vouchers.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
You know what I mean? That's what
Yeah.
that would mean.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks you.
Yes. Okay, so let's do that one. Okay, good. So things to know about the affordable housing crisis. One of the things there was, we got about 7,100 units under construction. When I read the CoStar report, you have about 7,100 units under construction. Actually, when you look at it, all these units are projected to come online this year and next year. Last year was about 4,300 units that was completed, but it showed a absorption rate about 3,100 units that were absorbed. When you look in terms of the population, Jacksonville had a 1.2 population growth over the last 12 months. Here's the tricky thing. Rents is going up to about 20%. Here's the little unknown fact that when we talk about acquisitions and we talk about development, the need is needed now. And to start construction, you may start a long process if the folks are not doing a gut rehab or if you're not acquiring something. Keep in mind that 90% of the residential land in Jacksonville is zoned for single housing families, not zoned for multifamily. So when you look at the Jacksonville Housing Authority, when I looked at the 970,000 units that they have nationwide, you look at the fact that how did they lose all these units? Well, they do these construction deals and they chop down the units. We're all excited that we built these new developments, but at the end of the day, we lost units. And Jacksonville Housing, underneath the Faircloth, which came out in 1937, we are allocated for 3,014 units. I feel like I'm throwing the left hook here. Okay, good. Okay, good. So we had an agency all meeting a couple of weeks ago. The first time we had an agency all meeting, we had a great day. We had a motivational speaker. And one of the key points of the agency all meeting was to make sure staff understand where we going, which direction is the agency going. And one of the key things is we wanted to reiterate the fact of what the mission statement was and what the 7 strategic goals. And I'm not going to ask everybody to scream out the strategic goals here, but we went through it several times and everyone clearly understand what the goals are of the agency. And you'd be surprised at how many people that did not know goals. And as I mentioned earlier, Centennial Towers is done. It's a beautiful building and it came out fabulous. The units in there are tremendous. And that looked like something downtown, but that's right over in Springfield, 208 units, a beautiful property, the Jacksonville Housing Authority done. And that concludes my CEO report.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Again, my apologies to my colleagues and those attending by the public for my tardiness here today. We'll go back to the top of the meeting. Yes, Commissioner Phillips. Mr. Alexander, one moment.
Because we have, as we said at the last meeting, that the HR committee was not going to meet until we had agenda items that we needed to review. But I thought that we had asked that as a part of, and if we didn't, I'll ask now, as a part of the President's CEO report, if you give us an update on where we are with vacancies and that kind of thing, if we could make that a monthly part of that so that we don't lose that information and how we're trending on HR. And if you're not ready, maybe our HR director can speak to where we are.
Yes, just so you know, I present that information and the package that I sent out 3 weeks ago is inside the.
I just want it on the record, that's all.
Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And Mr. Alexander, if you wouldn't mind in your presentation, maybe just touching on it every month, that'd be,
Yes,
Yeah.
for
because
sure.
there's a lot of information to go through. So
Yes, yes.
thank you.
Okay, for sure.
We're going to go back. I don't believe that there's a need. Or do we have any commissioners on the line at this point? Any other commissioners? Okay, so we're going to go back to the top of the agenda here. Obviously, thank you, Commissioner Phillips, for running this meeting in my absence. I presume that public comment was not handled. Is that accurate?
We actually did do
You did
public
public-
comment, and there
Fantastic.
was none either virtually or in the room, but we have had a couple of people join us since that time.
Fantastic. I guess we can, if we'd like, if those people did join us late, I will go ahead and open the floor again for public comment. So I'll ask first, anybody in the room would like to give any public comment today? For those joining us today? We don't bite. And could we have your address for the record as well, please? Thank you very much. And we have 3 minutes on the clock. Thank you very much for attending. Go ahead.
I'm a realtor, so this is my first time guys, and I want better. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll be sure to have Mr. Alexander reach out to you and see if we can't get you involved in one way, shape, or form. So thank you. Thanks for attending. Any other public comment here today? Anybody online? Last chance? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period here. A couple of things from the chair's comments. First things first, I want to thank Mr. Alexander, the acquisition committee, and Ms. Hodges for putting together today resolution 2022 JHA 12. However, I am pulling that from the agenda today as we were informed last Friday that unfortunately the project will not be going forward. We were not, the group that presented it to us was not ultimately successful. That said, as part of the chair's comments, I want to say I'm very appreciative of how Mr. Alexander, Ms. Hodges, and then our two teams came together to quickly kind of put together how this would proceed. And what I'd like to recommend to this board today is we allow them to proceed with that process. It became readily apparent that as we were going through this, talking about the various policies and procedures, that we need to engage these outside advisors to put these together anyhow. It is not something that we should necessarily be doing ourselves, as there's a lot of technicalities to these things that we do need third-party experts for. If I understand correctly, Holland and Knight, who represents was it Holland and Knight, Ms. Hodges? Greenberg Trauig, thank you. Greenberg Trauig actually represents another housing authority here in Florida who just recently went through this exact same structuring. In other words, putting together the acquisition, putting together the flow, putting together the policies, the procedures, etc. So I want to point that out, and we can get to that in a minute for discussion. The other one that I'd like to discuss is we did ultimately look at engaging an independent third-party financial advisor. This group, it's called PRAG, which I forget what that stands for. I'm sure it's in here. Regardless, they are an independent third-party financial advisory group that does nothing but, well, I shouldn't say nothing. The majority of their practice is focused on representing and looking at and helping housing authorities review and understand and underwrite and structure multifamily transactions. We had a very positive, myself as board chair and Mr. Alexander, I believe Mr. Lohr was on the line. Don't forget, a very positive introduction there. So I really would like to open this up to the board here to talk about this for a couple of minutes to see whether or not we should. I believe we have proposals from both of them to help us set these things up. Greenberg would obviously be more likely than not on an hourly transactional basis, Ms. Hodges. And Prague was I believe it was a $25,000 engagement to help set this up, if memory serves, Mr. Alexander.
Excuse me, Chair, but I think it was about 15.
15, my apologies. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. So I'd like to open this up to the commissioners here to ask questions, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit before we move much further. I see Commissioner Phillips.
Because they're looking to work with us as a housing authority, I'm not sure what the universe is, but is there any concern with procurement as it relates to engaging these folks?
Great question. Based on my conversations with Mr. Alexander, and I believe through Ms. Hodges with the legal at least, I don't think there's any procurement issues here. These would be single source, sole source procurements, and it's not with HUD money, is my understanding, which is another big piece. That said, there's nothing that would prohibit us. I think relative to the legal advice, I would more demur to OGC as to who we think we should use to engage that. Relative to a financial advisor, if the board thinks we should go out with a procurement request, I'm certainly open to that. But my point is, it's become readily apparent that as much as we'd like to put these things in place ourselves internally, we do not have that skill set currently.
I agree.
Yeah.
Typically, you use outside expertise in order to put together these multi-layered types of financing packages. But just wanted to make sure we're within the procurement guidelines.
Mr. Alexander, are you good on the procurement guidelines?
Yes,
Okay.
we're familiar with them. We don't need any, we are following processes, but we don't need procurement on that end.
Okay.
In terms of, because we're not using, we are using unrestricted funds.
Okay. Is there a preference of the board about how to proceed? Mr. Griggs, Commissioner Griggs?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a preference. All I would just, along the same lines, Phillips kind of stole my thunder there a little bit, but I would just recommend that there is some type of documentation about why they were selected in terms of expertise, background, and so forth. I'm always concerned when we do as a part of our procurement process that we're looking at the diversity of agencies that can perform, vendors that can perform these services. So I know that they may have a great track record and they've done business a ton of times with people we know, but it doesn't always mean that they're the best for the job.
I'll say this, Commissioner Griggs, to your point. Like I said, Prague came to us highly recommended. However, they were not, we certainly didn't source others. So if we think, I mean, Mr. Alexander, I would demur to you. I mean, it's certainly worth considering whether we should go to market with an RFP. What I've found is finding an investment banker to do deals is much easier than finding a true financial advisor who specializes in this area. They are few and far between. But Mr. Alexander, ultimately, we need to move forward with this process. I think the acquisition committee was pretty clear. We need this process in place.
Yes.
So certainly with respect to OGC and outside counsel, who it sounds like can help us kind of build the brackets around what we need here. I would encourage you to get started with that. I don't think we need a motion or anything to that effect. That's within your authority, I believe, unless Ms. Hodges tells me we should.
Certainly as a board, wanted to set some contracts that would
Correct.
to do that, but if not, Dwayne knows quite well what the need is and what professionals are out there. I'll just remind the board with respect to the Office of General Counsel, you certainly can go out for an RFP with your bond counsel. We have done that before. In fact, the city, it's required to do that under the city's code. You aren't required to do that. There's only a few firms, and the chair and I have had discussions that have the expertise in this area. You would be issuing bonds in your name, something that this agency has never done before. But to the chair's point, we had a discussion with John Wilson, who's very, renowned, not only in Florida, but nationally through his firm with doing these types of deals. And he has done one with a housing authority in Florida. But there's not many firms that are in the affordable housing arena, tax exempt bonds. So, unless you say to us, issue an RFP, our inclination would be to work with the chair and Dwayne and the general counsel, Jason Teal, to pinpoint what firm would work best for you and your needs, with the overall intent of spreading the work. Because OGC, we don't just like to give all of our work to just one law firm. We are very conscious about the other independents and the other, and the COJ. The only other thing I wanted to mention, Chair, is we did talk about breaking up the work. Greenberg Troward is a full service firm. So in the guise of spreading the work around and not giving all the work to one firm, we talked about breaking the bond work, separating that out from the real estate transactional work. And that would be another opportunity to, give it to a firm that has a local office here.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Hodges. And we had discussed, what that would look like, relative to Carlisle. But as I mentioned, that unfortunately is not proceeding. However, like I said, it became apparent that while we would have had 60 days to do all of this and put this all together, it sure seems like that it could have been done. It would have been stressful for Mr. Alexander, but it could have been done based on conversations with these professionals. But I think it makes a lot more sense to go ahead and start that now, so that we actually have policies, procedures, and guidelines in place. So from where I sit, I like Ms. Hodges' idea of kind of setting a spending limit on something like this to see where we can get. Knowing lawyers are expensive, I would hope that we would start with something like 50,000, no more, to see where that gets us on policies, procedures, research and everything else. To engage a financial advisor, I'll demur to the board and to Mr. Alexander whether we want to go for an RFP, but it seems to me that this is what we need to do to be proactive and have something ready to go.
Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate, I'd make a motion, if it's necessary, that we move forward with engaging the necessary bond counsel as well as financial advisor in order to set a framework for moving forward with the types of development projects that we're speaking about.
I have a motion and a second. We'll open it for discussion. Commissioner Brock, do you think we should set a financial limit at this point?
I'm mixing Phillips, but.
Commissioner Phillips, there's not enough coffee today, commissioners. There's just not. And I looked right at you too.
Yes, you did.
Commissioner Phillips, are you thinking about a financial limit on this to start and then get a report back on where we stand? I think I'd feel good about that.
I hadn't thought about it, but I can agree with your thought on it. That'd
Okay.
be fine.
I would, again, and I'm going to demur to Mr. Alexander, it sounds like 15 for the potential financial advisor. So I would think we could, I'm comfortable with that number, I think, approving that. And then between you and Ms. Hodges, I'm taking a shot in the dark at 50 for a law firm to set this up, but that's based on professional experience. I wouldn't quote it for less, so.
So not to exceed 50,000 for the bond counsel or law firm, and then the financial advisor to be capped at 15 initially.
Yep, I agree. And then Mr. Alexander, you can bring us back if we need to increase or we run into problems
good.
or whatever else, come back to us and let us know.
Sounds great.
The general counsel for a court reporter. Would you also like to roll into the legal services, the transactional real estate, because that is separate from bond counsel. Bond counsel will focus on the issuance of the bond as opposed to the transactional documents that you need, the note, the loan agreement, etc.
And so that would be above and beyond the 50 that we just spoke of within the 50.
Right. I mean, correct. Or we could start off with, 25 and 25. I mean, it's here. And the good news is with the bond counsel, if we go with Greenberg, the set of documents have already been done. So it's not like they're having to put so much work in and on the front end to do the process and procedures, since that's already been done. So that might be, and then you can always add more money to these engagements.
Okay, so an initial cap of 25,000 for each of those two.
To the chair,
Commissioner, yes.
so you're saying that if we add the other portion, we need to see 50,000?
No, so what I was saying, if you want an aggregate overall cap of 50,000, you can just, split the two. I mean, because we don't have a deal in front of us, it's hard to really project how much the deal is going to cost to do. And so that's why I'm comfortable starting at a lower number, right? To just have some general conversations, policy making, procedures type work that they're doing. I see.
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. Commissioners, I'm thinking what maybe we do is we set the aggregate budget at 50 and then allow Mr. Alexander and OGC Ms. Hodges to play within that aggregate budget, because one may come in lower, one may need more time, reallocate time here, as opposed to trying to figure out who needs what time. Commissioner Griggs?
I was just going to say, Mr. Chair, since we don't have a deal in front of us, we're asking this vendor to conduct help develop these policies and procedures is something they've clearly already done for other clients. Either I'm in the wrong business or this costs a lot of money. I mean, my point
By
is
the word, they're attorneys, we pay by the word.
My point is that we're hiring this vendor because they've done they've routinely done this work. I'm almost prepared to question why it costs so much work for a project. You don't.
Yeah.
So,
Commissioner, that's a.
Make it make sense to me.
Yeah, I think kind of where I come down, and Mr. Alexander and Ms. Hodges can speak to this as well. I think while they have policies and procedures into place, there is going to be a larger necessity to have working group sessions with them to explain what we're actually going to have to look at and approve. So while they've certainly drafted these, right, and they're going to have to be tweaked for what we want to do, my understanding is it would be prudent on our behalf to also have them here, have working sessions to understand what they're going to do, what these things mean, present them. Ms. Hodges, did I misunderstand that suggestion?
No, I mean, not at all, but just, remember with the attorneys, we're going based on rates, and probably the lowest rates with the government discount with firms like this wouldn't be any less than $350. And so if I took a budget of $25,000 and divided that by $350 an hour, we're talking 71 hours an attorney's time. I mean, that's a week, a full-time week plus half of a week. I mean, that's not, so to me, this is actually not that high at all. But I'm just, I'm comparing this to other engagements that we typically have with other independent agencies, and we're just, starting up, with the firm. And I see the work on the front end is like the chair said, is coming up with a policy, a procedure from a real estate perspective, document perspective, from a bond perspective. And then when we get a deal, and honestly, Saxon Gilmore, I mean, that's a firm that you've had to lean on to do your transactional work. And I'm sure if the deal didn't go through, you're still paying Saxon 50 grand. I would be shocked if you weren't paying them, but Dwayne could get you those exact numbers.
And Mr. Chairman, I think it's important. I can't speak for any other member of the board, but the last project, though it was very interesting, exciting, it seemed like it was a good opportunity for us. It had a very short window, and I can anticipate that future deals may in fact have that same kind of short turnaround time. So as much work as we can put in ahead of time in getting these policies, procedures, being familiar with and having on board the advisors that we need, I think it's going to be important to ensuring we have the comfort level and the what is the word, the expertise that will give us a sense of comfort when it comes to taking action on these projects. After our discussion at the, I guess it was governance committee meeting about the Carlisle, was that governance?
Was it governance or- right.
Yes,
Governance
I
or
think it was,
acquisition?
or acquisition, might have been
Acquisition, yes, ma'am.
acquisition, yeah, acquisition. There were a lot of questions still out there about bonds and various things, and so, yeah. So I think that going forward is important to ensure that we have the expertise that we need and we can rely on before taking action on these types of projects.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will say to Mr. Alexander and Ms. Hodges, as a real estate attorney, I would be happy to give my input on things from a real estate perspective that we should be reviewing: title, surveys, environmentals, condition reports, zoning, all of those things to help alleviate some of that upfront cost. There's just some basic things we should be doing. But I do think an initial budget of 50 coming back to us with, if for whatever reason we bump up against that 51, I would like to understand why. To Commissioner Griggs' point, that's 50,000 is effectively 140 hours of work, rough math. That should be enough to get us pretty close to where we need to be. And then, that'll give us a chance as a board to have some working sessions as well with GT to explain to us what exactly they are doing here to make sure we understand it. And then hopefully have these in place before another acquisition opportunity presents itself to us. So, Commissioner Brock, did you have a question? So if you accept a friendly amendment, Commissioner Phillips, I'd like to add the caveat on a budget not to exceed 50,000 for the attorneys.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Accepted.
So we have a motion and accepted. There was a friendly amendment that was also accepted. Can I get a? Great. So open it for public? Okay, so before we go ahead and vote on this at the recommendation of OGC, there is a motion and a second on the table, which has been discussed by the board. The board has moved to engage the services of professional firms. One, a law firm for a fee of not to exceed $50,000 for assembling, communicating, teaching the policies and procedures necessary around the acquisition of a project and the utilization of tax-exempt bonds. And a second engagement for a financial advisor for an initial fee of not to exceed $15,000 to also begin assisting in putting together the necessary policies and procedures. There was a motion and a second. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and open this up for public comment, please. Anybody in the room have public comment? Thank you. If you could say your name and address for the record, please. Say your name one more time.
Mickelson, civil, Civil, like the law. since this firm that you guys been going over have done such work, I feel it might be quite easy to get a quote because of their past experience, perhaps. Maybe I'm wrong. The other thing in regards to the, I guess, RFP, I don't know, but from what I understand, that probably would cost more to do, since you don't have to do something like that. If you have to do it, I don't know if you guys look into that, because yeah, it'd be good if a local firm can get that opportunity to work with the housing authority and to help put these things in place.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any other public comment in the room? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I failed to say that I'm also MBE and WBE certified, so I work with contracts. Work attorney, so work for the RFP, I would like to do so. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
So we need your name again and your address again, please. Sorry.
Oh, my name is Marie Lescouflair. My address is 11247 San Jose Boulevard, Suite 408, Jacksonville, Florida, 32223. And you want me to repeat what I said regarding the RFP?
Yes,
All right,
please.
I do work with government contracts as well. I'm MBE and WBE certified. So if I can help with the RFP, I'll be glad to do so.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Any more in-room public comment? Is there anybody public comment online? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment. Any more discussion from the board? Hearing none, I'd like to go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor for the motion as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries. Mr. Alexander, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A couple more chair comments and,
Sure.
yes, Commissioner.
Two of the folks that were shown up there, they had yellow by them. Did that
Oh,
mean
my
they
apologies.
wanted to speak? No, okay.
No. Just to be safe, thank you, Commissioner. One more time, is there any public comment out there? If you could raise your hand or unmute yourself and make yourself known, please.
Down there at the bottom, see the two little yellow circles? I didn't know what that meant.
If I may, those three people are you, yourself, Commissioner.
Oh,
and
wow.
Two other folks that's in the room.
Great.
They have them on timeout.
Great. So they're not active. Okay, fair enough. Thank you. The other chair comment I'd like to put out is twofold. The first is the all agency day. I had a chance to come in and talk to some folks. The folks here at this agency are just great people. And they were, I think it's fair to say they were very appreciative of the work the board's doing, very appreciative of how we've looked at things. You can tell, kudos to Mr. Alexander and the C team, there's an excitement there, which is exciting to say. So I just want to give the board the update. I had a chance to meet with them and that was absolutely fantastic. The other thing I wanted to mention to the board is, and I know we've seen it, I've asked Mr. Alexander to circulate it and it continues to happen. There's more and more articles coming out about the rents and the pricing in Jacksonville. It seems to be nonstop. There was a 60-minute piece that was published about Jacksonville, which was less than desirable. You know, I put it out there as my chair comments to say that dollars like this that we're spending, I realize come out of our pocket, but I think it's important in furtherancing what we might be able to do to help alleviate that. So I just want to thank the board for taking the time to go through that. With that, I'll be quiet and I'll open it up quickly to the rest of the board. Are there any other boards that would like to comment or bring anything to the board's attention?
No, so what about this resolution? We could not take action before you came
Yep.
on 11. Are we doing anything with that?
We certainly will.
Okay.
All right, hearing no other board members with comments, let's go to resolution number 2022 JHA 11, which is a resolution to approve JHA's awarding of the services to the current provider, All Care Services, and a new vendor, Double H Air Conditioning and Heating Services?
Yes.
Is there any questions or comments about this before I bring it? And I have one. I'm assuming that in the rubrics of grading, these were the low price contracts. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, so it was, excuse me, it was only 2 contractors that submitted bids for this, and that's the 2 there. And typically, we normally have 1 in the backup, and in this case here, R-Care is the lead and Double H is the backup.
Understood. And when you say the backup, they're on retainer or they're actually being awarded work?
Well, they are being awarded work, but they are basically up to 150,000 for one, and because we never know what plumbing issues we may have. So when I say retain, basically they on retainer.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve. I have a motion to approve and I have a second. Second, Commissioner Brock. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none. Oh, yes, Commissioner Phillips.
I just want to make sure I understand. You said retainer. Usually you pay somebody something up front for a retainer, but they are just going to be available for contracting with. They're
That
not
is
being
correct. Yes.
paid anything
In
up
advance.
front. They're just
That's
being
correct.
approved as a vendor
That's
for
correct,
this
yes.
use. Okay, just want to make sure.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Discussion? Hearing none, we'll close the discussion. All those in favor of approving resolution number JHA 2022 JHA 11, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries. Again, my sincerest apologies to my commissioners for my tardiness. That is completely unacceptable on my part. I will do better. And to the staff and Mr. Alexander. If there's no other questions or comments, minutes. Oh, thank you.
Oh,
We didn't approve the minutes.
approve the minutes. We did not.
Goodness gracious. See today, there will be coffee served after the meeting. I have the board minutes from Monday, February 28th, 2022 in my possession, and having reviewed them previously, they looked good. Again, my much thanks to Ms. Carroll, our court reporter here. I really do enjoy having these typed out. So thank you.
Nice.
It is very nice. Can I get a motion
Move
to
approval.
Thank you, move. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from February 28th, 2022, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries. Again, thank you all very much. Commissioner Brock?
Chair, we're gonna overlook the question that Commissioner Phillips asked about HR for this meeting.
So I think the ask, Commissioner Phillips, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we included in the presentation that Mr. Alexander makes each month going forward.
That's what I asked, but I said in lieu of that, if he didn't have it available, if the HR director could just give us a brief update.
Understood. Would our HR director mind giving a brief update on how things are going? Yes, please.
We currently have 190 employees. We're actively seeking numerous positions that are on board. We have assistant property manager, property manager, for the like, and most of we're at, everyone, we can't believe that 37 interviews.
Thank you.
Mr. Alexander?
Thank you, Director Court. I would put out there that the 190 is more than what we had since I've been here. And I will also acknowledge the fact that HR has been doing an outstanding job in the midst of it being, as they quoted, this being a great resignation period. So in lieu or in being faced with all these resignations, as they call them, great resignations, we have still been able to maintain our employment levels.
Yes. Commissioner Phillips?
That just raises another question. I know in our HR committee meetings and in our discussions, one of the things that I asked was we ensure not only that we had a policy about exit interviews, but we were actually conducting those exit interviews. And if there has been significant resignations, what are we seeing as the trends of why people are leaving the agency? Is it retirement or resignation?
Through the chair, actually, there's the two main causes are resignation for other employment and then retirement. And that's still coming. And we have three exit interviews
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, anything else today? Hearing nothing, can I get a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
So moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, no opposition. Thank you all very much for your time today.
Thank you. Wayne.